So let me start the story off this way. Back when I was a kid, I used to have to walk to the movie theater and pay 10 cents. But we had to sit back. No, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But look, seriously, when I was a kid growing up, my dad was in the military, so we lived in Italy. So, for those that don't know, overseas, we usually get our movies or American movies a little bit later when they come out. So, I was around 8 or 9 when I finally got to see the movie Steel. Anyway, I remember inviting my friends over, and we all sat down, got the VCR out. If you know, you know, VCR for life. And we put in the movie Steel. So, this is where the controversy happens. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and my friends did likewise. It was really relatable to us. I don't know why Shaq gets so much hate for his acting skills. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't compare him to a Denzel Washington, but for the most part, he tries to bring life into his characters. He tries to bring enjoyment and love into every role that he's playing. I mean, these movies are also made for kids in mind. It's not like he's trying to win an Oscar out of this, but my point is that I really do enjoy Shaq as an actor. Here's another reason why I enjoy Shaq. So Shaq actually spent some of his money in helping to produce this movie. And to me, that's a big deal because it really shows that he cared about the representation and the integrity of the movie. Again, Shaq gets a lot of hate for the few films that he actually did, but for the most part, he believed in the films that he was producing and he would back them. So, again, this is a representation movie. Still, John Henry Irons is a classic, and we need more movies like this. Now, when we look at IMBD on the rating scale or the quote unquote Rotten Tomatoes, back then we didn't have Rotten Tomatoes. I think that we based it off of just simple newspapers. Now I'm really telling my age. But like, I forgot exactly how we rated movies like this. But you would find the ratings in like the review columns of newspapers. With that being said, everybody disliked the movie because it wasn't a whole lot of action, because Shaq was a bad actor. They had so much hate with the fact that, the storyline wasn't very true to the comic, how they felt like there was too much representation of, gangs and like it was too unrealistic. And I have to remind people, yeah, it scored a low score on IMDb, and a lot of people didn't like it. This movie had only, what, a 16 million, $17 million budget. That's it. It didn't have like a huge budget or a huge following. And this wasn't during the time that Shaq was who he is now. This is a young basketball player trying to make a name for himself. So, no, the acting isn't going to be on Denzel Washington level. And we also have to remember that this movie is following like Blank Man and Meteor Man, which I'm going to talk about later. But this movie didn't have a huge budget. And my point in emphasizing that is because when you read the reviews, you're going to read a lot of people saying that the costume was whack, the explosions were whack, the storyline wasn't very well written. And by the way, none of this is actually Shaq's fault, nor is it the superhero Steel's fault. And again, I'm going to touch on some of those issues a little bit later in the video. If you can't tell by now, I can make this an hour long, but I'm going to try to cut back a little bit, make it, reasonable to watch. Okay, so who exactly is John Henry Irons? His first appearance is in The Adventures of Superman, I think issue number 500. And we see John Henry Irons as a mechanical engineer, like running a program, and he ends up being rescued by Superman, and he decides to put up this mantle while Superman is away, puts the S on his chest in reference to Hope, calls himself Steel because his armor is made out of steel. And that's pretty much the storyline or origin of Steel in a nutshell. John Henry is also another name for an African American folk tale that was usually told in the stories of or in the ways of blues music. He was a free man and he worked, I think, at the steel mill, or like he worked on railroad tracks. There's a lot of stories with him. He was an African American folktale hero. So they have like a lot of different stories for him. Something that if you guys are interested in, definitely go look up. But this is basically who he's loosely based off of. Anyway, let's keep this steel train rolling. Sorry. So let's jump into the question of Warner Brothers. Now, we had other superhero movies, black superhero movies like Mediator Man and Blank Man, that were cult classics. But to be honest with you, both of these movies did not do well at all in the office either. They were both flops. So Warner Brothers didn't have a lot to go based off of, but they wanted to see if they could produce a, steel movie and just throw content out there. But Warner Brothers didn't have any faith in black superhero movies. Not a lot of people did because they were flops. But something else that I want to make sure that I highlight in this video is that you have to remember these were the 90s, like from early 90s to late 90s. People were more involved with music and rap and other cultural experiences other than black superheroes. With that being said, too, the media was portraying black superheroes as a joke. It wasn't until like the movie Blade that they started, and Spawn, that they started actually representing black characters in serious superhero roles. But to be fair, Spawn and Blade really weren't technically superheroes, they were anti-heroes. But even Spawn flopped, and Blade didn't do very well in the box office either. So for those that think that Blade was the success of, Marvel Studios, it really wasn't. It was still a flop of a movie. It barely broke even. So it wasn't the fact that it was a popular black actor. It was the problem that people weren't seeing or supporting black movies because these production companies weren't giving out enough money to actually produce great content. So, why is this all important? What's the moral of this? The moral of the story is that these production companies aren't going to produce good black movies because they don't see, or we don't support black superheroes very much. We as a community and we as a people who want to see more diversity in our characters have to start actually going out and saying something. And we also have to be grateful for what is given to us. Yes, it was a low budget. No, we don't want trash. But at the same time, John Henry Irons was a really decent black superhero flick. And no, we may not like enjoy it like we did Black Panther, but Black Panther wasn't our very first black superhero movie. Now, it was budgeted correctly, but we still have to make sure that we support those movies that weren't budgeted correctly and actually tell Warner Brothers and production companies what we want to see more of. And this isn't just about black men, but us coming together as nerds and geeks alike and actually demanding and talking about what we want. That is female, white, black, Cuban, or Asian. But some of these companies actually do make strong points. If they're not able to sell enough toys and they're not able to sell enough tickets and they're not able to get good enough actors to fill these roles, then what is the point in doing it at all? That is actually a really good point. If it's not making money, then what's the point? And something that I also want to highlight, and this is going to be the end of the video, is that a lot of people haven't seen the movie Steel. You can actually go watch it on HBO Max. For some people, like if you were born in 2000, you probably never heard of the movie Steel. For some, I mean, situations vary. But if you haven't seen the movie, please take a minute and actually go give it a look. And don't be so critical of the movie. Try and keep an open mind and realize that the budget was only like 16 million to even start production. Shaq put in some of his money to make this happen, and other people tried to make this happen with what they had. Anyway, this is Black Heroes Club signing off. Thank you so much for listening, and please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.